coffee shops and luxury high-rises were on DC's U Street. It was known as Black Broadway. Today's guest looks at the area's rich and unique history, from emancipation to struggles with gentrification, and it's captured in her book, Black Broadway in Washington, D.C. We welcome author and journalist Briana Thomas. Briana is also a licensed D.C. tour guide. Thank you so much. That was the genesis for how this idea actually got started, right?
Yeah, so the idea got started with me writing about it as a journalist for Washingtonian magazine, just highlighting what we called the forgotten history of U Street. And out of that photo story essay, talking to long-term Black-owned businesses and Howard University students and things like that, came the book. So it's 3 centuries worth of Washington, D.C.'s Black history.
And you really poured your heart into this because you started working on this book 10 years ago. Help paint the picture of what that street, that important corridor, looked like in that era.
Yeah, so this has been a long time coming. The history is just so rich, and it continues to be a story worth sharing. So if you were to go to the U Street corridor during the Black Broadway days, as some of the longtime residents would say, you wouldn't show up looking raggedy. And the reason for that is because you might run into a Duke Ellington performing at the Howard Theater, or Pearl Bailey, Billie Holiday, and then there were more than 300 Black-owned businesses throughout the corridor during this time. So it was really a safe haven for Black people during a time of segregation and Jim Crow laws.
Really, the who's who of D.C. showed up, and you showed up looking your best.
Yes, exactly. You showed up looking your best, and you performed your best as well. There was just so much happening all the time, round-the-clock shows, in fact.
And why was that corridor identified as the safe space for people to enjoy jazz music and other art forms?
Yeah, so during this time period, this would have been the segregation era. So really, Black Broadway is between the early 1900s till about the mid-1900s, finding that marker around 1968 after the 1968 uprising. And because of segregation, if you were a person of color, you couldn't go downtown to see a movie. You couldn't just go to any school simply because of the color of your skin. It didn't matter how talented you were or how rich you were banned because of segregation. But within the U Street corridor, these nightclubs, these dance halls, these places were unsegregated. So people had the power to start their own businesses, start their own schools, and party however they wanted to.
So free. You can truly be free in that area.
Exactly.
And I know a lot of the venues no longer exist. The Howard Theater, though, still standing, iconic venue. Tell us what you experience when you go on a walking tour. You're going to open those up in March when the weather is better. What can people experience that goes beyond the pages of your book? Yeah,
so if you were to explore the U Street corridor with me, which I hope everyone does, I started the Howard Theater. And the reason I start there is because a lot of people were taught in school. I'm born and raised DMV area. I learned about the Harlem Renaissance. I had never heard of a DC Renaissance, but the Howard Theater is really the marker for this DC Renaissance, starting with people like Ella Fitzgerald, the First Lady of Song, debuting at the Howard, Miles Davis performing there, Louis Armstrong. All these folks that we learn about associated with Harlem or New Orleans, other places, got their start right here in Washington, D.C., and then they went on to travel to other places. So we would start at the Howard, learn that history, then we walked through some murals, and then we would head over to U Street, where we also look at some of the Black-owned businesses that are still around.
I love this. This sounds like such a great idea, and I like that you're starting in March when the weather improves. The book is available any place that you can buy a book where books are sold. And what is your website, really quickly?
Yes, my website is blackbroadwaywashingtondc.com, and also on Instagram at the Black Broadway. You can get walking tour tickets.
There you go. All you need to know right there. Thank you so much, Briana, for joining us this afternoon and sharing about your book.
Thanks for having me. Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.